Yes, we are here. Welcome to the spaceship, everybody. How are you, Seth? You ready for
What's
the
up, man?
takeoff?
Good. How's it going? We just had a snowstorm yesterday.
Oh, that
So I'm
sounds
loving it. I
fun.
was I was
That
thinking
sounds
about, I don't
fun.
know if it's possible, but maybe one time we can be like man on the street. I thought it would be cool to like start the show like like with the phone, like I'm outside walking through the snow, and then
Oh.
like I come here and then like turn the camera on the phone off and turn the camera on here. So you let me know if we can do that sometime.
Yeah, that will be cool. Welcome, everybody. I see friends are tuning in from the usual place, the usual suspects from the usual places, including various places in the US, Mexico, Quebec, Egypt. Leon, I see that you're here with us live. That's exciting. That's great. Hey, buddy. And if you're new here, or you're watching the recording here for the first time, you are in the great transition, and we're all in the great transition. If you feel that something unprecedented and really dramatic is happening in our time to the whole world, to the whole human family, then we're here to tell you that you're right. That's what we're exploring here in the Great Transition. And we're looking at everything that's happening in the world from this perspective, how we can all be one human family above all our differences, beyond politics, beyond religion, beyond culture, beyond everything that separates us. There's also some unifying, binding force of nature. And that's really what we are trying to get at. So, welcome to the Great Transition, everybody. We're here to put the pieces together, see the big picture. Let's do this. Seth, take us into a zone. What do you want to? Because of you, we put up this title. What's our title for this broadcast?
Uh,
It says
what is
will. Oh, wait a second. Will pandemic? No, where am I looking? Will pandemic distress lead to alternative economics? Ooh.
the answer is yes. We'll see everybody next on Sunday. Thank you.
See
Great
you
show.
soon. That was.
That was the fastest show ever. Um,
Yeah.
so there was, as deep as we get in the wisdom of Kabbalah and all that, I still go through my news feed, and uh, is our sound okay
I think
here?
it is, and I think it's only Chris that is hearing us. Guys,
Okay.
tell us in the chat if if you hear me too low and Seth too high, or vice versa. Just let us know in the chat. I think we're good until we hear otherwise.
Okay. Um, I still go through all those news feeds. I still listened to Tom Cruise shouting at his, I don't know if you heard about this, shouting at the crew of his movie or something. He was on making Mission Impossible 7. And
Seven hundred.
yeah, and I guess there was some people on the set that didn't have masks on, and he exploded on them. And I guess the concept is that entire industry um, is basically shut down. I was at the grocery store this week. You know how you have in Israel, like as you're checking out of the grocery store, you have all those magazines next to the bubble gum and stuff.
Of course, yeah.
Okay,
Typical,
so there was one of
typical,
those magazines that said,
typical consumerist practice. Yeah,
yeah,
sure.
so it said like Brad Pitt is leaving Hollywood to, I don't know, volunteer for a couple of years to raise his kids, and so Hollywood is changing, right?
Mm,
So it's not just movie stars. It is all of the guys who mow the lawn for the movie stars,
right.
for the people, and
Or do the
it's this,
makeup, or
the makeup,
carry their stuff, or put up the fix
serve
their
them lunch,
caravans, or whatever. Yeah, sure.
everything, right? So, for example, in Manhattan, you have a high rise office building in Midtown, right?
Yeah,
And maybe there's 8,000 people that work in the building, right? So those 8,000 people eat lunch every day and buy coffee every morning. So all of the places down on the ground floor that sell soups, that sell sandwiches, that sell cigarettes, that sell newspapers, that sell coffees, um, all of the ancillary stuff, right? And
right.
then all of the Ubers and taxis that need to take the people, you know, from this meeting to that meeting. It just goes on and on. And then when
Yeah,
people come into town, for example, you have some guy on a movie set who's got to come into town for something, or someone's coming for a movie, so they're staying in a hotel. So it's not just any one industry, it's also all the ancillary industries around it
right.
that um, are are shut down now. Um, so there is clearly, obviously, there's a lot of economic distress. Kiko keeps telling us, I keep seeing in the chat that, Egypt, everything has been pretty chill. And I
Yeah,
wonder if my
interesting.
perspective in Egypt, I wonder if my perspective is very just US based, or I wonder how many countries can relate to what we're saying. But for sure, for the 350 million people
Mhm.
in this country, this is what's happening. There's a lot of
No,
industries
no,
that are
it's
shut
not
down.
just the US. It's not just the US. A lot of Western countries, Western economies, that's the situation. And, the data shows that there is like a lot of effects on the economy because of the pandemic. Yeah, culture. It's not just movies, theater, actors, and everything, everyone around them. So there's that. But there's a lot of the services sector that are not necessarily vital things, and of course, like, places where people go, like, restaurants, coffee shops, things like that. So of course, a lot of that took a big hit. That's, yeah.
Yeah, so New York closed down. By the way, we're not going to get into the show about the absurdity of certain things. For example, like, you're not allowed to do one thing, but you are allowed, like the law doesn't allow you to, you know, do one thing. You're not allowed to, you are allowed to go grocery shopping. And if you go to the grocery store here, there's
Hmm.
people in every aisle all over the place, touching things, checking things out, bagging your groceries, putting
Yeah.
stuff on the shelves. You're taking it, 100 people in the grocery store, but you're not allowed to, I don't know, go to church or go eat in a restaurant or whatever. So we're not even going to get into all of the absurdity
Hmm.
around, why this and why not that. If we want to shut down, then shut down. If we want to stay open. But why all this picking and choosing? We'll leave that for some other
But
discussion.
it's weird. Yeah, there are some strange things that are happening that are hard to explain. Yeah, sure. The
um
COVID
so
policies are not necessarily understandable.
yeah,
In all cases. Yeah.
there's the website somewhere that shows all of the politicians who have made rules, and then pictures of them breaking them, like being at a restaurant or being,
Oh, the
wherever.
politicians themselves.
The politicians who
Well,
made the rules to say you can't do something, and then they're
right.
doing
Well,
it. So
here it's actually everything, business as usual. Isn't it the same with anything else, regardless of COVID? you know, where they typically, say one thing or determine one
right, certain
policy and do
different
the
set of
other
rules
things.
for them.
Yeah.
Yeah. um so a bowling alley, the guy who, I mean, something silly, but a bowling alley, or any kind of place where you a video game, an arcade, just so many businesses that can open. And then all the
Hmm.
restaurants in New York this week, I think it was, they closed indoor dining. You're not allowed to have indoor dining. So everything is
Hmm.
outdoor, which we talked about. It's funny because outdoor now they build these structures with four walls that have heaters inside. So it's basically an indoor
Yeah.
space, but it's outside. But yesterday it was snowing and freezing cold and wet. So are people going to sit outside in some hut on the sidewalk outside the restaurant when it's snowing outside and cold? I don't know, probably not as much. And so there's a lot of economic distress.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stress on people. Um, People were making a living before, able to support their family before, and now they're just not. I have a very good friend. His business was window treatments, putting shades
Hmm.
and all kind of stuff in people's places, and people just don't want people in their homes right now.
Hmm.
So it goes into so many different industries. Um,
But
this
hey,
kind of
the vaccine is coming.
Okay, so good. So if the vaccine works and everybody is able to go back to work, so then fine. So this is irrelevant. Uh, if, on the other hand, even if let's just assume the vaccine works for everybody, right? There's no
Okay.
problems. There's been such a change over these last 8 months, 9 months, that I don't know that everyone's going to rush back to the movie theaters right away. I don't know that everyone's going to want to see the same kind of movies again right away. Um, there might be a spike, right as soon as if everyone gets healthy again, that like they go back out. But some of these, I just don't know that same spirit that was in people to consume these things, to go out to the shopping mall all the time, that it's still there. So even if the vaccine completely works, I think that there's been some kind of fundamental change going on in people. So now, on the other hand, Bitcoin yesterday or today, I don't know, it keeps going up. It's like hitting all-time highs. So you have people becoming millionaires and hundreds thousands heirs and billionaires, and the
Mm-hmm.
stock market is at an all-time high.
Yeah.
So there's no shortage of money at all. There's no so let's just take America, because that's the environment that I know the
No,
best.
no, I'm
There is
laughing. I just want to say I'm laughing because it's like it's so typical, this situation where, something happens in the real world which is bad. It could even be an economic crisis, like an economic crisis directly, and yet you'll see very quickly somehow the financial world, like the stock markets, they quickly adjust and keep soaring and rising, and there's this almost like this inherent structure where the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. It's kind of, it's a cliche almost, but it's happening.
so there's plenty and plenty of money. I mean, just more, I mean, obscene amounts of money. Some people have just, I mean, more money than you can spend in your life. I mean, Jeff Bezos, some of these people, you could spend $1 million a day on luxuries and never run out your whole life.
Right.
Just crazy, crazy amounts of money. So the question I guess we're going to come to is, um, does there need to, at some point, or is there going to be some kind of legislation to, what's going to happen with all these people who don't have food and don't have work and can't pay their mortgages and can't pay their rent, and then on the other side there's so much wealth now, you know typically, well, how are we going to feed it? How's everyone going to be fed? Are they going to take from the rich and give to the poor? Is the government just going to print more money? Is, maybe something very pragmatic would just be like, well, my dad always says they'll create new industries. They'll, necessity is the mother of invention. They'll
Mm.
come up with new things. They'll come up with new businesses, new things for people to do. So maybe they'll come up with new things that people can get paid. I'm not sure what. If people don't want to just consume, uh, maybe the government will just print more money, which has its own set of problems. Or will they take from the rich? So, and if they do take from the rich, well, that opens up another whole set of questions there, because we've seen that happen a few times in history where governments come, and Russia was a great example. So Karl Marx had this great idea. Karl Marx said the people, all throughout history, it was always like a top-down pyramid. You always had some strong leader, an oligarch, a king, a czar, whatever it was, and he ruled everyone. But Karl Marx said, let's let, it should come from the workers, from the bottom up. Is very hard to get everyone to agree to that. And by the time you got to Joseph Stalin, was, he implemented it with the bayonet, and he ended up killing, I don't know, 100 million people. I don't know how many people he killed. Don't quote me on that. Many, many tens of millions of people. You've even starved out some of the
Yeah.
people to get them to comply. So, communism. Um, well, why did I just say
I
communism?
don't
I just
know, but I think that when you say that word,
in the air across the open.
suddenly there's this yeah, it's like oh man. Oh boy. You know what?
Yeah. So
Let's no, I think you brought up some really intriguing questions. If the pandemic has caused economic distress in a lot of countries, maybe most of them. The numbers show, at least, and when you look at GDPs and all that, that definitely there's a slow, that there's a recession, essentially all over the world because of COVID. Um, So there is a question to be asked. Now the vaccine is coming. Are we going to see the economy going back to normal? Maybe COVID, maybe we'll get better, our health will get better, or we'll be out of the woods in terms of getting COVID, but will the vaccine fix the economy? Or, and what does it mean to fix the economy? Will it bring it back to what it was? So so you're saying if it doesn't, then where are we going? There is a problem. There is a growing problem, basically.
It was we um there was this situation where we felt that, as long as a person pays attention to questions like why do I live and what happens after I die, it's hard to live because a person typically doesn't have answers for these questions. So
Hmm.
if you make up something that works. Religions made up all kind of stories, and you can look at, anyone who wants to do the kind of research can go back and see the similarities between different religions, and how we all kind of have this something implanted in us, and depending on what culture, depending on what part of the world, you interpret it a little bit differently. um, so we do have, some kind of religion which helps calm people down, but the more that we become liberal, the more that we become, which by the way was a very good force, because you don't want to just be um, like strictly conservative. The more you become progressive and liberal, you kind of throw off the religion. So the modern world is kind of throwing off religion, right? Throwing off traditions. We don't live the way, our grandparents lived, the way our great grandparents lived, and they had the same traditions and the same holidays. And as we go forward, um, the more liberal and progressive we get, we throw off. We say that religion benefited the rich, benefited the 1%, the 10%. That justice, those laws benefited just a minority. We don't want that crap anymore. So you throw all that out, and what you're left with is like nothing. You're left with this emptiness because you threw that out, you didn't replace it with anything. And so as we started advancing and kind of becoming more free from the laws and the religions of our parents, of our grandparents, so we began consuming more, and that became our religion, because that's how we can fill that emptiness. When you buy something, or when you go on a vacation, or you do these things, that quiets the question down. Before, you just prayed to Jesus, you prayed to whoever you prayed to, your Jewish God, your any God, you prayed to some God or
Mm-hmm.
something like that, and that helped you calm down, that helped you kind of make sense of things. Today, when we didn't have that, it became more of a consumer culture. I was able to calm myself down by working towards these goals, by buying something, going out and getting my Starbucks Frappa Lappa with 2 pumps of whatever, and then I can be calm for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I
we
think it's
have the, yeah, go ahead.
no, I think, first of all, historically speaking, there is no doubt that secularism went up together with consumerism and together with capitalism. There is a parallel that is happening there, for sure. It's also the result of industrialism, like the fact that we've discovered that we can produce so much, with machines and with the industrial revolution and everything. And then the question was, okay, now we need people to buy more. Basically, the architects of the current economic model that we're in, the planners and the architects of that system, they understood that consumerism needs to be a way of life, needs to be a lifestyle, needs to be respected, and that we should be competing with each other. Using our social nature, we should make all kinds of material things, status symbols, to make us want more than what our neighbors have. And you always want to keep up with the Joneses, and then you find yourself in this cyclical chase for consumption. And that definitely ties in with the rise of secularism throughout history in the last, especially in the last century, since let's say the 50s of the last century until today. So you have all of this happening, but I just want to say it's a change in the individual while also it's planned. It's driven by, advertising the way we know it today was invented, essentially invented in the way that it works today in the last century. That never before in history you had such a concept where if a company is producing something today, 2/3 of their budget goes to marketing and advertising and branding, and only 1/3, I think that's kind of the rough numbers, go to the actual production. So it's very clear to the industrialists, so to speak, those who started this, that they needed to create the audience, to create the buying power to match their production power. So it's happening, in two aspects.
During
So
the I don't remember when it was, 30s, 40s, 50s, maybe 50s, um, 40s. The cigarettes were smoked primarily by men, and
right,
the marketing, one of those marketing
yeah,
geniuses, I think it was Sigmund Freud's nephew or something like that. I forget
yeah,
his name right now.
Ed,
He was like
Eddie Bernays, Edward
Bernays.
Bernays.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Um, which, by the way, the Nazis studied how he how his
his
techniques.
PR
So
techniques, yes.
his PR techniques, yeah. Um, so he had this idea. They were going to open. They were looking for how to sell more cigarettes. So he tells a story, or it's written in a book that he was interviewed in, that they set up. There was going to be a parade. I don't know if it was after a war, or it was Thanksgiving, or one of these big parades in New York or wherever it was, and they were going to put some beautiful women on the street smoking.
Right, right,
And then they
right,
had the news, when the news
right.
cameras were going to pan by, they were going to have they were going to have a big shot on them.
Yeah,
Like, it looks like it's just coincidental, on these beautiful women hanging out, being liberated free women, smoking cigarettes. And
exactly.
through this, this is how they opened up the market to women smoking.
Right.
You know,
So okay. So this is it's a great example. This is exactly what I wanted to get into. That when we're asking the question, let's go back to the question we started with a couple minutes ago, right? So today we are in a problem because of COVID. Let's say that it's because of COVID. The economy slows down. There's more inequality. There's more economic distress. There's more poverty. There's more people who don't have a job, and they find themselves thrown out of the workforce. They don't know what they're going to do, and they ultimately they need to be fed and clothed and housed and so on. So you have that sort of trajectory. But then there's another thing. We have gotten used to this lifestyle where that has materialism and consumption very deeply rooted in it due to these sure the you mentioned the historical rise of secularism, but it's
so,
a
but
lot
by the
of
way,
it.
though, this is something that maybe the virus is doing. The virus may be changing people to say, you know what? I kind of like being home. Like, I'd like to be able to go out and see my friends and stuff, but I kind of like, being home. I kind of like being able to prepare meals and not sitting in traffic every morning and sitting in traffic every night and having to run around just to pay my bills. So there may be something that's kind of changing that consumer. I mean, of course it's going to still linger, and of course we can still see, spikes in it,
Mhm.
but uh, I have a feeling that this is part of a bigger kind of
I
emotional
would
and
say it like
psychological
this.
change.
I would say, yeah, psychological change. I would say that COVID helps, even if now, again, and let's say there's a vaccine, and let's say that it works as soon as possible, great, it saves us from COVID and all that. In the last year, in 2020, people went through, they got an opportunity to to question the lifestyle of the 21st century, to question what is it that we're supposed to be doing, do we actually need? I'm sure that these questions more or less consciously are, are brewing in people. That observation on life from outside for a second, on our, our modern lifestyle that has consumption at its core, that has work at its core, that has being in traffic, that has this
I mean, when you
constant.
meet somebody, one of the first questions is like, "What do you
Yeah,
do?" And
yeah,
basically, that doesn't mean like, "Do you enjoy painting?" or "Do you love playing tennis?" It means like, "How do you earn your money?"
right,
You know, I mean, that like the
yeah,
job was really the
yeah.
defining
the
thing for people in
the
the modern world.
it used to be, if you go to, I think, if even if you go to Shakespeare or something, or like plays from, from the past, you'll see that people are, the texts are people meeting each other and they're saying, how do you do, not what do you do. It's, and it's kind of changed to what do you do. So that's kind of like another indication to that. But I think what's interesting, is when you're asking the question, what do we do now with all of the people who need help, who are going out of work, and that work is not necessarily coming back? We need to couple this with another question, which is what has happened to people as well. Are we sort of starting to a little bit push away, or at least question the lifestyle that we had before COVID? And now, when you put those two things together and take another third component, to put another third component into the picture, we are in a reality today, a technological reality, where we can technically we can feed, house, and clothe people, and give them medicine, and give them education, even without that much of a problem. Technically, this can be done. It's not the economic model. It's not, today, if you're not working and making your living, and are able to pay the debt for the university, and all that, and then you won't have electricity and education and food and running water. So all of these things together bring up questions about our way of life until COVID, our economic model until COVID, and now we're in a situation where a lot of people, millions of people, are in economic distress. What are we going to do? Are we going to just try to go back to what we had? Maybe it's not even possible. Maybe it's not even possible. You know what I mean? By the way, the when you said communism, the C word, the I saw Leon just said that he remembers it, and he came to the U.S. when he was 9, and he remembers. So I think, I assume he's coming from the Soviet Union. Maybe he can tell us a thing or two about it. That's interesting. Anyway, go ahead, man. I don't know where I
A,
where I
a
took the
person,
discussion. Yeah.
um, a person is always every person, whether they're rich or whether they're poor, they're running a piece of software that says, "I want to do I want to work less and get more." I mean, even a person who's working 20-hour days,
Right.
it doesn't mean work like less hours. It means I want to get more out of each of my efforts, right?
Yeah, it's the E equals MC square of the human ego. It's our nature.
Of all
How,
nature, right? Not just
maximum
human, but animals,
benefit,
everything. They're not
maximum
going to
benefit
dig
for
more than they
human.
need to dig and
Yes.
run more than they need to run. So on the one hand, we have this line of software which is not going to change, which is how can I get the most for the least amount of effort.
Right.
um, there's a small percent of the population, also according to nature, that is more diligent, you could say, more prone to be leaders, for example. Just by nature, there's one queen bee and many worker bees. This has
Right.
nothing to do with race. This has nothing to do with education, although you would probably see that those diligent are also educated, but you can have others that are educated too. So there's a couple.
Sure, and some, and in your body too. You have different cells doing different functions. Not everyone is a brain cell. and you need all the cells. And in the same way, you have emotional people, you have more intellectual people, you have people who are painters. That's kind of what their qualities you know allow them to do. And you have innovators, and you have scientists, and you have
This
so yeah,
this is one of the
sure.
problems that happened during the Russian Revolution, pretty much, I guess, any revolution. When you kill all of the owners and managers, you also kill all of the people who have the skills of managing, right? So I think I told the story once on the show about this 26-year-old mayor in this town, the mayor of the town, the leader, he was elected as the leader of the town, where I used to live upstate. Great guy, progressive guy. He did the first same-sex marriage in New York State. Likable guy, good-looking guy, fun guy. You could
Hmm.
see him at the bar on Friday night, but he never managed a budget of a couple $1 million. He was a house painter before that.
Mm.
So the skills to manage a sewer system, the skills to manage hundreds of employees, it's a certain kind of skill. So anyway, we're just laying out a few kind of laws of nature. One is that everyone's running the same software, whether you're rich or poor. The same piece of software is, how can I get more for less effort? Okay. The second thing, which kind of is what makes communism not work, because if I want to, if I can get more, if I can get paid the same amount and work less, if I can
why
work
why
less
should I
than
more
you,
why should I work more then?
why should I
Yeah.
work more? And so you suck out of the society all of the fuel to motivate. And now on the other hand, you're going to have the diligent in society. You're going to have the people who, no matter what, they're going to want to create. They're going to want to make businesses. They're going to want to go out and do things. And so those people are going to accomplish a lot. And the others are going to say, I just want to chill, man. You're going to give me some food, like, that's cool. Like, I want to hang out. I want to chill. And so the diligent then are going to get also frustrated and want a war, because they're gonna keep creating more and more and more, and you're gonna have to keep taking from them and giving to the um,
The
the
poor, let's
public.
say. Yeah. Hmm.
And the public, on the other hand, is saying, hold on, we're all supposed to be in this together. So just give me my food, give me my this, give me my that. And if you don't, there's a big mass of them. So they can also create a war. And if not, they can, you know, if it happened here, for example, you just get China to help you out, or you get, someone else who wants to help. So you take an idealistic concept like communism, which means, like, let's, look at this country. There's plenty of money. There's plenty of resources. There's plenty of brains. There's plenty of land. There's enough of everything for everyone, right? We could give everyone everything. Everyone could have a home. Everyone could have food. Everyone could have medicine. There's enough of everything for everyone. The problem that we get to, ladies and gentlemen, is that if we first, and that's what the whole great transition is about, we have to go through a transition in our hearts and our minds. Because if we don't go through that kind of change and understand the system we're in, then any government structure that we set up will just be governed by ego, and it'll be one against the other, and my way is better than your way, and then no, my way is better than your way, and it's gonna lead again to more war. You're gonna have to start enforcing your communism through the KGB, basically, through police, you're going to have managers who come around and make sure everybody is doing their certain amount of hours of work. And then you're going to have managers coming around to make sure that the other ones are paying enough. And so you're going to have to pay those managers more than the regular workers. So now all of a sudden you're starting to set up the same kind of structures that you had before. The managers are not going to want to enforce all those rules and work extra hours and everything if they're not getting compensated. So after a couple decades of working as a manager in a communist country, you have plenty of money and you have a nice house, and you've invested that money, and you're a regular old capitalist, all over again. So until we as people change and understand the system that we're in, and understand what kind of transformations are happening to us, um, I'm afraid to tell you that I don't think communism is going to work. I know you.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler
Shocker.
alert.
That's a shocker.
Yeah.
No, I think really okay, we have a lot of things on our table here.
Yeah, a lot. And we
Let's
tried to not put too, we already
yeah,
discussed, we're
yeah.
going to
No,
try
no,
and put
no.
not too many.
This is a huge topic, and in order to really get the most benefit out of it, out of our conversation, I think let's kind of see what we want to focus on, because um this is the world right now. When we're talking about the great transition, this means a transformation that is happening on all levels: economics, politics, how we use technology, our patterns of consumption, but also, and probably most importantly, is the change of the human being himself or herself. Let's try to focus on this aspect and see how the change that human beings need to go through, how that can give birth to new policies and new structures of society that can actually work. So I want to say first of all that we base our view on the authentic wisdom of Kabbalah, and maybe our viewers are not aware, but the preeminent Kabbalist of the previous century, Kabbalist Yehuda Ashlag, or Master of the Ladder, as his Kabbalistic nickname is. So he wrote extensively about the problems with communism and what happened in Soviet Russia, and the kind of future that we need to, that we're, like it or not, we're being pushed into by nature itself. And he himself brings up all those questions for discussion that we are right now discussing as well. I think that's important to understand, because it might not exactly be clear to people what's the relationship between Kabbalah and and economic models. So at the end of
Or
the
also,
day,
what is Kabbalah, or this Kabbalah or that Kabbalah? We're specifically, what Bal Hasulam gave us. I mean, like this here, you know, these ones here
yeah,
is just how the upper light cascade. It's like a couple thousand pages of just how the upper light cascaded down through the four spiritual worlds into this world. So and then how from here, following those same exact steps, to go back up. So this is very, very pragmatic. Everything we're saying is based in this kind of structure. um, so we're not engaging in some kind of mysticism, even though we're talking about a reality that's beyond time, space, and motion, even though we're talking about an infinite, endless fulfillment.
well, physicists are talking about that reality as well, by the way, and they're doing rigorous
I wanted to
research. Yeah,
um, just be clear as you're going into this, because a person can get confused about who Bala
yeah.
Salam is, or what we're engaging in here. So it's something that's on the one hand very pragmatic. On the other hand, all of those spiritual worlds, everything that exists in each of the spiritual worlds is the same thing, but it's just more and more concealed every time it descends. At the top, it's just endless fulfillment, endless light. And then until it gets to us, it's concealed, 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 but it's the same structure. And for us, what we're doing then is, then by rising up, we're just revealing the reality that we're already in. That's why something so insignificant as this protein body, this collection of carbon, can actually perceive something infinite in our life, because it's already there. We don't Of course you can't see infinity with your eyes, of course you can't taste infinity with your tongue, but we can reveal through this whole method a way to do that. So um, yeah,
Good. So
wanted to just distinguish. I
no,
saw
no,
somebody was writing about.
that's great. That's great. Let me continue exactly from that point. So we
Okay.
what are human beings? And we'll tie this into to economics and everything that's happening now. Okay, that'll be our channel. It's human our challenge. Human beings are, on the one hand, this protein based body. That's what we are, which we can research and try to dissect and understand. And with this protein based body come needs. We have to fulfill them. We have to eat. We have to have sex. We have to have a shelter over our head. We need some certain sense of confidence. And, that's kind of like just like any other animal. But the thing is that we also have another part, an interior part, one that is hidden from our five senses, and that is our desire for a fulfillment that goes beyond those animalistic bodily desires. Now, the whole problem is how what is that desire, understanding what it is and understanding how to fulfill it, understanding what we actually want as human beings and understanding how to fulfill that.
and
If
and as a
we,
baby
yeah,
and as a baby, when he starts developing, at first he doesn't really know what he wants, and that's us, and that's consumerism and all this. It's like we just feel empty inside. And at first, you have it makes sense because I have to eat, right? I need to find a shelter. When you're filling the first few ones along the list, it's necessity. So then as we keep progressing, we keep feeling the same kind of justification. I need this,
and the
I need this.
great transition that we're talking about is a point in time, a point in human evolution where we have to start fulfilling that desire. That desire for a higher fulfillment starts demanding its fill. And as long as we don't fulfill it and we don't learn what it actually is, as long as we're not engaged in that, we're trying to fulfill it in all kinds of wrong ways. One of them is excessive materialism. It essentially becomes something that we are discovering.
Well, don't,
Yeah,
don't say wrong to me, okay? I have PTSD from being told that was wrong as a kid. Use some other word.
it's the improper. It's the
No, no,
not
I
adequate.
want to
It just doesn't
approach it from a
work.
complete,
It just
no,
doesn't
just
work. Is all I'm saying.
approach it from, hold on, approach it
Yeah.
from a different angle, because it's not just that it's wrong, for example. In fact, that um,
No, I'm it's
the
okay, go ahead.
failures there, the failures there is what causes us to look in the right place. It's those specific, it's not actually wrong, like, oh, you were made and you're doing something wrong when you spent a lot of years doing something wrong. It's specifically, you wouldn't go look for something to eat if you weren't hungry. So you're going to call being hungry wrong? No. You wouldn't know to look for you wouldn't, those wrong things are directing us towards the correct, to the fulfillment that can fill that empty void, that endless void. So I'm just asking you to try and find a new way to say it besides just, it's wrong to try and fill it by buying a new car. No, you buy a new car, you realize you're still empty, and through that it helped you understand that the kind of fulfillment you're looking for is a different kind
Is
of
wrong.
fulfillment.
No, I'm
Okay, fine, you win. Continue, please.
the bottom line is it's not the full, we don't understand the desire that we have that is beyond our animalistic desires. That's what I'm saying. We don't understand it. It's developing and brewing within us and shape shifting, and it's developing, and we don't understand where it's going and what it actually wants. Because of that, we try to fulfill it with all kinds of things. That's not wrong. The attempt, and I stand corrected, the attempt to fulfill our our unique human desire with all kinds of things is not wrong. But the actual fulfillment that we're looking for is not those things. You cannot fulfill. Again, it's trying to put a square peg into a round hole. It's just incompatible. It's just I'm not saying it's morally wrong or ethically wrong. I'm saying it's technically wrong. So Kabbalah teaches you what you're made of and what your desire is developing into. And that desire that we have as human beings, that desire that begets the questions of who am I, why am I here, what's the purpose of my life, that's the desire that we all share as human beings. If you take a child, put him away from before, at the age of 5 6, let's say, before the mechanisms of advertising start confusing him, before the TV and culture start confusing him, before all of that begins to happen, there is a natural instinctive desire in the human being to find a purpose to this whole human experience. We repress it and shut it and and push it away.
exploit it to sell stuff,
And
you know,
and what? And yeah, yeah,
exploit it
sure.
in order to sell stuff.
Yeah, we exploit our just as we exploit our social nature,
So
yeah, in the
so
same
there
way.
exists inside of a person this emptiness, and that emptiness is driving a person forward. And the media really corrupts that in order to steal, you know, for itself from there. Uh, but as we advance and through this whole process, we'll start to see more and more that my happiness, I can't be happy if I'm just taking for myself, and not in some moral way and not in some ethical way. We'll start to see that actually, um, I guess you could say, if you keep polluting the water, if you put a factory near the water and it keeps polluting the water, like in Detroit, for example, then all of the water you drink starts to poison you. So if you start to, if more and more nature will push us and force us to feel that everything we do affects the whole system, then at a certain point, I want the benefit of everyone. And in fact, I start to feel that the more everyone else in society is happy and fed and healthy, the better my own life is. I don't have to worry about wars anymore. Now I don't have to worry about my kids going outside and playing. Now, when my kids go to someone else's house, I know they're going to eat healthy food. I'm silly example, they're going to eat healthy food. And the kids, if they're getting in a fight, they're going to be guided in the right way, and no one's going to make a business that's trying to screw over anybody else and pollute the environment. And all of a sudden you kind of end up back in communism, but not the communism. God, every time I say that word, I feel like the air gets sucked out. Not in some kind of any way. I wish we could find a better word even, but some family government, that this kind of communism, meaning that we've no, it's not. Of course, you could never, even in the most perfect idealistic communistic society, if it was perfect and everyone had what they need, you would still not give equal resources to every person. I mean, if you had an Elon Musk, forget about shooting rockets to the moon. If you had somebody who could innovate and come up with
Mhm.
great ways to do something, and you had somebody else who just wants to chill and play soccer with his friends and or whatever, play video games, you wouldn't give them equal amount of resources to develop technologies or to develop a new machine that could
Well,
harvest
yeah, and
food.
and your body does it too. Nature figured it out. There's a molecule in our body. I think it's called ATP, is the acronym, and it's comparable to money. It's pretty much like how biologists compare this to the amount of money that a cell has to do all kinds of things, and your body shows you that different cells have different amounts of ATP, but they all very different amounts, but they all use it to benefit the whole body. So the kind of the kind of new system, there is going to have to be a change. We have to say some conclusive things here. We don't have a lot of time left here. There has to be a change in the economic system, in the economic model that we currently have. Why? because human beings are evolving, and the desire for the actual fulfillment of the human being is something that is starting to demand more and more its actual fulfillment. And as long and the current model of economics doesn't help that happen. It even pushes us away from it. So COVID comes, helps us stop what we were doing for a second, for a year, get used to not being so addicted to this constant, constant fight for survival kind of lifestyle, and those goals of constantly consuming and working and consuming and buying and consuming and all that. It puts a stop on this for a second, and then we can start to better learn and feel ourselves and what we actually need and what we actually want. And if we have gone through a true period of maturity as a human family in the last year, in 2020, even somewhat, even if it's not very conscious, if we managed to somehow look at what we were doing from outside and just think maybe we can do better, that already means, and maybe we don't need what we thought we needed, and maybe there's something else that we're looking for, and so on. If this kind of maturity is starting to happen in the human psyche, that means that already in 2021, we're, especially if we're getting a vaccine now that is going to put the medical situation back to normal, this is going to be very interesting, because we're going to see whether we are actually able to go back to what we had and what we were a year ago. We're going to actually see very quickly if everything just goes back to normal or not so, or not quite. And so, if not, um,
When
and
not.
yes, exactly. When it doesn't happen, we're going to have to dig deeper into what kind of life we want to have on this planet. And is
Let
there
me
a
ask you.
way? And is there a way? One last rant here.
Yeah.
And is there a way that we can? And again, the answer is not communism. We've been there. We've tried that. Just to make it clear to anyone who's listening to us and all that. Um, uh, Clearly, that brought so much suffering, and trying to redo that is not going to work. Yet we got to ask some questions. Can we create a society that is not based on scarcity, that you always have to run and chase and fight for your survival, and if you don't, do labor for some income, then you don't have running water? Can we create a society where we use our ability and innovation and technology and everything that we can do to provide for everyone, and come up with a new, and this is the kicker, this is the big deal here, come up with a new kind of drive, a new kind of fuel, a new kind of motivation for human beings to make their experience here better and
Right.
better
If everybody
for
has
everyone.
food and everyone has a home and everyone has 2 vacations a year and everyone has health care,
Then
so
what?
what the
Yeah.
hell are we gonna do? Yeah.
So we're going to dig deeper into, and I'm going to say it, oh boy, the non material fulfillment that human beings are actually designed to explore. And
Which is
we'll
not
even,
something weird. At the end of the day, it's we just want pleasure, right? Whether it's pleasure from tasting something, pleasure from feeling something, from seeing something, we just want pleasure. So if I get pleasure from, we said this last week also. When I was 50, I got pleasure from making millions. When I was 70, I got pleasure from spending it to make a branch on the, a new wing of the library or new wing at the hospital, right? It's not about whether I get the money or spend the money. I just want pleasure, So if the pleasure comes to me from feeling in love, or the pleasure comes to me from getting a hamburger, I just want the pleasure. So the method of how we get pleasure change, and that shouldn't be weird to anybody, because if you think about the pleasure you got when you were, 10 versus the pleasure you got when you're 16, it's clearly different. So we have a few minutes. Let me ask you a good question that came up from Yehuda Barak on YouTube. Should a person be focused on where we are right now, the current situation in the world, or where we want to go, where to direct our focus?
wow, good one. I would say absolutely where we want to go. yet not just eliminating and ignoring where we are, because evolution is an incremental process. One degree builds on another degree. The prior knowledge and experience that we have is now, they find, is actually written into our genes, and that becomes us in the next in our next stage of evolution. So it's a very if we want to be, if we want to have a better experience, if we want to have a better life, personally, socially, globally, we should be looking ahead. The problem is, that in order to look ahead correctly, we can't just rely on our imagination. This is the problem when, this is the problem with communism, right? So, that you can say the communist ideologues said, we can take all those resources that we have in this country and just share them, and everyone, it'll just be great. But it's not exactly our next stage of evolution. What we need to do in looking forward is we need to understand where nature is pushing us. That's what needs to happen. And where nature is pushing us, based on the authentic wisdom of Kabbalah, is the evolution of our mind and heart. So we're going to move towards a different kind of pleasure, a different kind of experience, a different kind of perception of ourselves, each other, and the world. And we're going to aim for a sense of pleasure that is not rooted in materialism, and it comes from, we'll just do a hint and end at this because we're out of time. We're going to be aiming at a pleasure that comes from our balancing act with nature itself. There is a beautiful program in nature. Nature knows how to fulfill every living thing with all that it needs. Nature knows how to make a vastly complex and interdependent system work together harmoniously. If we tap into that, we'll start experiencing consciously what that harmony of nature is. That's what nature wants from human beings. Not just to let us, try to just exploit whatever we can from the natural resources. Well, so 10,000 years ago, with the agricultural revolution, it was with wheat and fruit and vegetables, and now it's in the form of hamburgers or cars. It's the same thing. That's still an animal level. What we have to develop is the human level in us, and the human level needs to reach a higher level of pleasure, higher level of fulfillment, higher level of perception that comes from balancing with nature. Yes, we will have to change our economics as well, um, in the process, but we need a lot more time to discuss that. Is what I'm finding. Anyway, man, what do you say before we conclude?
I say, first of all, it was really cool to see Josie here. Leon, thanks for joining us. Everyone, Slightly Slanted, I think we missed you last show. David, Kiko, Steve, Kevin,
P.
everybody who joined
Marlin, Lee
us.
Kelso, nice lady.
Gary, woo. Yes, Isabel, hi. Yeah, so everyone who's commenting here, asking questions, remember, if you want to reach us during the week, find us at P Marlin, find us at TGT Pod,
Yes, if you're on
TGT.
Twitter, the Twitter handle is TGT_pod. TGT underscore pod. Um, and
Okay.
for YouTube, if you want to make sure that you get a reminder for our live shows, which happen twice a week, Sunday and Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern, then subscribe to the Great Transition YouTube channel. The link is right now above me. Subscribe there to make sure you don't miss any great transition beat. We're also posting clips between the shows. So yeah.
All right. So everybody who joined us from California, from Egypt, Miami, Norway, San Francisco, Colorado, Brazil, Portland, Ohio, Oregon, St. Petersburg, Spokane, Washington, England, Toronto, Singapore, and Tibes, France, Corinne, Nairobi, Kenya, Jacksonville, Florida, and New York, Quebec, and everywhere else you are. Thank you so much. We love you. We will see you on Sunday, 2 p.m. Eastern. And that's the show.
You got a song for us too?
What am I? Learn what they know. Just a child, I learned by watching you. I need you to show me something good. Show me how. Can't do it without you. We're not waiting for something to happen. We determine what will happen. We're not waiting for something to happen. We determine what will happen.
To belong, to come here as a friend. The light is strong to touch your soul at last. I need you to show me something good. Show me how. Can't do it without you.
We're not waiting for something to happen. We determine what will happen. We're not waiting for something to happen. We determine what will happen. We're not waiting for something to happen. We determine